Hello, this is the Mushroom Wizard, and I'm returning again with another presentation regarding the mushrooms found in Saskatchewan and the ways in which we go about identifying those mushrooms and picking those mushrooms. So today we're going to be looking at one of two presentations regarding a gray area found between edible and toxic. So these are mushrooms that require special preparation to become edible. Without that preparation, they are considered to be toxic. As a result, some authors of field guides will call these mushrooms toxic. Others will call them edible. It's actually neither or both. So let's take a look at some of the mushrooms we'll be looking at here. The genre that will be included in this presentation are Gomphis, Lactarius, Ramaria, and Russula. And to be fair, you could probably lump some of the mushrooms found in the edible presentations in here as well, right? I mean, you could consider any of the honey mushrooms, so any of the Armillaria species, to be certainly quite toxic until cooked extensively, as well as the mushroom that goes by the common name, the fried chicken mushroom. So let's continue on here. So the presentation includes mushrooms that are toxic yet rendered edible through specific techniques, or mushrooms that are mild to moderately toxic but are eaten regardless. The first mushroom we're going to look at is probably the biggest species of coral mushroom found in Saskatchewan. This is the yellow-tipped coral, Ramaria formosa. So the fruiting body has many pink branches extending upwards from a white central basal mass. You can see that at the bottom. The branches are stubby. The branches may fork off of other branches. They are soft and dense. If you touch them, it's hard to rip them apart, but they do still have kind of like a soft feel when young. Now they turn brown and leathery as they get older. And they may have a wavy fire-like appearance, and that should become more so as they age. And then these are up to about 8 inches high and 6 inches wide. So quite a large fungus. Very dense too, if you look at that. It's kind of all crushed together. You cut into the middle and it's very solid. Here are some size references for you. The tips are 3 to 6 prongs per tip. That's what you can expect. They have, again, that wavy fire-like shape to them. They are yellow in coloration, becoming brown with age. And then these produce a yellowish-orange spore print, if you were to do a spore print. Their ecology is mycorrhizal with hardwoods. They are found late summer through fall, and they are solitary or scattered. Now, if you recall the presentation on coral mushrooms or coral fungi, you will remember perhaps that most of those mushrooms were saprobic. These ones are mycorrhizal and they grow from the ground, so they will not be growing off of wood like so many of the other corals do. In terms of their edibility, people do eat them. They are relatively poor. They need to be cooked for at least 30 minutes. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of like chewing on leather or rubber. Like, as you see there, they're tough and leathery. I have eaten these. Not great. They do have a little bit of a bitter aftertaste, and not much of a taste at all beyond the aftertaste, to be honest. So why bother? Their toxicity is relatively mild. I would even go so far as to say moderate. They are laxatives, so if you eat more than a small amount, you can expect to be going to the washroom within the next hour or so. If you eat a lot of these and they're not cooked enough, they do cause stomach pains. For me, I have a specific reaction to these mushrooms where it can cause like a slight headache. Again, that's probably like a sensitivity. I have their high allergen potential, but it's actually not an allergy that you're experiencing with the majority of mushrooms. What you're actually experiencing is a sensitivity. And for me, they give me headaches. So I've only eaten these once and really didn't agree with me. I'll just continue along here to yet another Ramaria. Now, if you recall from the coral presentation, there was a lot of look-alike alerts between certain corals and this particular coral. So people do still eat this one, regardless of it being mildly toxic. The fruiting body is tan to peach in coloration, turning browner with age. Many branches stem from a single central branch. Those branches fork out into more branches and are at times wavy, especially as it grows older. When it's younger, maybe not as much, but the older it gets, the tougher and the more wavy it gets, kind of giving this fire appearance. Branches are often pressed densely together, as you can see there. That's kind of what you can expect from Ramaria corals in general. Tough, leathery texture. They become more brittle with age. They grow up to about 4 inches high and 3 inches wide. So again, a good-sized coral mushroom. Here's a size reference for you. The tips are 1 to 2 pronged, sometimes with minute prongs upon the larger prongs. You can see that there. It's like prong and then little prongs upon the end of those prongs. These become brown with age, and they produce a dark yellow spore print. These are saprobic mushrooms. They grow from decaying hardwoods and conifers. They occur late summer through fall, and they are found solitary to scattered. Now, there are 2 variants in Saskatchewan. On hardwood, you have this darker colored variant. On conifers, it is more pale. They are, however, the same mushroom. And it's quite a pretty mushroom. Very easy to mistake this for the other corals, though, that we've talked about in the coral presentation. The edibility is relatively poor. They must be cooked for at least 20 minutes. These are tough, leathery mushrooms. Sometimes, again, with that bitter aftertaste and not much of a foretaste to precede it. These are for advanced mushroom pickers, or just don't pick them at all. Mild toxicity. They are a laxative. Again, some people have sensitivities to these that are especially strong and cause headaches. So this next group of mushrooms are collectively called the bearded milkcaps. And that is Lactarius pubescens, Lactarius representinus in the middle there, and Lactarius torminosus on the right. Basically, they look the same. It's just more like yellow, orange, red, right? That's all you need to remember. So this is Lactarius pubescens. It's off-white to pale pink. And then there's yellow to yellowish orange for Lactarius representinus, and then Lactarius torminosus, which is the most common of these, is red. They are convex, and as they age, they become depressed in the center there, kind of what you expect from the Lactarius genus, if you remember the presentation on Milkcaps. They are zonate, so you can see those central bands extending outwards from the center. And they are fibrillose to tomentose, very shaggy, almost hairy, and almost woolly around the margin especially. Very firm to the touch. You could break these in half if you put enough pressure to it, but you would need to apply quite a bit of pressure. The margin is down-rolled when young, and these are tomentose. And they could get to be quite large. They can be about 6 inches in diameter. On the left-hand side, that's Lactarius representinus. You've got that yellowish, orangish look. On the right-hand side, Lactarius tomentosus. Here's the rims. Kind of see a size reference there as well. See how that margin curls underwards there too, underneath the cap. That's Lactarius representinus. Again, they're all relatively the same size. The gills are pale orange in color in Lactarius representinus and Lactarius torminosus. And on the right-hand side, we have Lactarius torminosus. Then they're a pale pink in color in Lactarius pubescens. They are adnate or decurrent, so they'll either reach across or slightly curl downwards. They are crowded together, as you can see there. They bleed a white latex. Now, if you recall, Milkcaps in the Lactarius and Lactiflus genesis, if you damage the gills, they'll have this liquid form that's very milk-like. It kind of looks like chalky white milk-like substance. That's called latex. So these bleed a white latex. Short gills are present between the gills. And then they stain a lilac when damaged in Lactarius representinus. So that's the orange one. These are also cream or pale yellow in terms of their spore prints. Now this is Lactarius representinus that you're looking at on the right-hand side. You can tell from the yellow color. So the stipe is the same color as the cap, sometimes with darker spotting. Yeah, and you certainly see that there. They are cylindrical, so about the same width throughout. They have a central attachment to the cap, and they're filled with a pith that hollows away with maturity. So when they're young, it will feel solid, that stipe. When it's as it approaches maturity, it becomes hollow. And these are up to about 3 inches high and 1 inch thick at their largest. The ecology varies between these species. So Lactarius representinus is mycorrhizal with spruce, and Lactarius torminosus and Lactarius pubescens are mycorrhizal with birch. These are terrestrial species. They are found on the ground, and they are solitary to scattered. And these are found summer through fall. In terms of their edibility, it's relatively poor. These are consumed some places in Europe and in Asia after extensive boiling and fermentation techniques. They are very, very acrid and hot. So think about, like, say, the hottest curry. If you're in, say, an Indian restaurant or something of that ilk. If they are not pickled or fermented or boiled, they do have a mild to moderate toxicity beyond the hot taste, and that is the presence of sesquiterpenes. I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but these cause gastrointestinal distress, vomiting, cramping, and diarrhea. So generally speaking, the countries where these are consumed, such as Turkey, they would be boiled and then they would be fermented or pickled. And that causes the breakdown of these mild toxins. And then, of course, these are in places where hot, acrid flavor profiles are enjoyed. That's not so much in Western European culture or in North American culture here. But some places they would be considered delicacies. The next one is that we're going to be looking at. It's a group of Rosella species that go by the common name the Sickener. Now, these are not nearly as toxic as people make them out to be. No one has ever died or been seriously injured from eating these species. So on the left-hand side, we have Rosella emetica. In the middle, we have the emetic brittle. Interesting that it's given that name when it's not Rosella emetica. It's actually Rosella silvicola. And on the right-hand side, we have the winter sickener, Rosella cremoricolor. Rosella cremoricolor and Rosella silvicola are much more common in Saskatchewan than Rosella emetica. So the cap is scarlet red, becoming pale pink, or even white after, say, like a heavy rainfall with Rosella emetica. Sometimes yellow in Rosella silvicola or Rosella cremori color. These are convex caps. They become flat and then shallowly depressed with age. And if you recall the presentation on brittle gills, there was actually two of them. That's a very common sort of cap structure that you see. So the cuticle on the top is paper thin and it peels away easily from the center in fully to the center in Rosella emetica, and then about halfway to the center in the other two. And underneath you would of course see a white flesh or a pinkish flesh. The margin is bumpy or striated. These become damaged easily, as with all brittle gills. You can see a little bit of damage there on the bottom. These grow up to about 4 inches in diameter. Here's a size reference for you. On the left-hand side, that could be any one of the three. No way to really know. On the right-hand side, you can see that yellowish, so it's not going to be Rosella emetica, it's going to be Rosella cremori color or Rosella silvicola. Here is the gills, and that's Rosella silvicola, as you can see, identified by the person who took this photo. So they are white, becoming cream with age. They are adnate to adnect. So sometimes they will dip down a little, or sometimes they'll just reach across and touch that stipe. They are close to crowded for Rosella emetica, and close to subdistant for Rosella cremori color, and Rosella silvicola, which is what we have there. Those are close gills, I would say, and they could be a bit more distant in that species. Short gills for all three species are completely absent. And that's something we see in some of the Rosellas. Again, they're brittle. If you run your fingers along those gills, they will break apart and flake away. And then these all produce a white spore print. Looks just like that. The stipe, in this photo I picked it because somebody circled it, but it is very, very white for Rosella cremori color and Rosella silvicola, and those are the common ones that we're seeing in Saskatchewan here. And then sometimes slightly yellowing with age for Rosella emetica. The photo here is in fact Rosella emetica, so more often than not you're going to see it very white. They are cylindrical to clavate. Clavate is kind of like where it's thinnest at the apex and then thickens towards the base. And they form a central attachment to the cap. Once again, they are filled with a powdery pith when young, and then they hollow out by maturity. And they are up to about 3 inches high and a ½ inch thick. You can see it next to a pine cone there, or a pine cone, just to give it a bit of a size reference again. And this is Rosella emetica, and I'll tell you how you can tell. So, in terms of ecology, they are mycorrhizal with conifers and symbiotically associated with sphagnum moss for Rosella emetica. And you can see that there, it's actually in sphagnum moss next to a pine cone. That's a pretty good indication that we're looking at Rosella emetica. Anything else will be mycorrhizal with hardwoods, and that will be Rosella cremori color and Rosella silvicola. And those two do not need any sort of association with moss to be present. These are terrestrial mushrooms. They are solitary to scattered. They are found summer through fall for Rosella emetica, and then only found in the fall for Rosella cremori color and Rosella silvicola. And these will be found very late fall, actually, for Rosella cremori color. Hence the name, the winter sickener. In terms of toxicity, mild to moderate. I have it there listed as moderate, but really it is fairly mild. If you eat them raw or not cooked properly, they do cause gastrointestinal distress, vomiting, stomach pains, diarrhea. You need very long cooking times to break this down. Most people would consider this a poor edible. They, again, must be cooked very long periods of time. We're talking 30 minutes. Even after that, these will be extremely hot, they will be acrid, and they will be spicy. It'll be less than if you were to eat them raw, but it will still be there. And then what happens after that in places where this is eaten is they are then pickled and fermented. Usually fermented. and then eaten kind of as a delicacy. But this is in places, again, where hot acrid taste profiles are appreciated. And that's not really the case here. I do like them. I have actually just boiled these, chopped them into small pieces, and then add them to a much larger mushroom mix to bring a bit of heat to it. And I've never had any sort of toxic response to them, but people do tend to have mild toxic responses and not enjoy that taste. So for the most part, people should just avoid these. Now, if you are picking rissolas, I'm not sure if this was covered in the brittle gills or not. One way to determine whether or not you have an edible rissola or a mildly toxic rissola is to take a piece of the mushroom after you pick it, put it in your mouth, and let it sit on your tongue for about 30 seconds or so. And if it becomes very, very spicy and acrid, that then you've got a mushroom that you probably won't like unless that's a flavor profile that you enjoy. And in that case, you will need to boil it for a long time, and you will need to either cook it afterwards or ferment or pickle it. But for most people, just avoid it. The next species we're going to look at is one that I do enjoy eating. This is the pig's ear, Gomphis clavatus. So the fruiting body is vase-shaped, or resembling two or more vases connected at the base. You can see that very clearly in this photo. The interior is yellow to yellow-brown. It has a fertile exterior that is lilac to violet. It's about 6 inches wide and about 7 inches tall, so quite a large fungi. The margin up top there is wavy and eccentric, and then this bruises reddish brown when damaged. Here's some size references for you. It's a very unique looking fungus. You can't really mistake this for anything else. Absolutely stunning. This is a ridged fungus, like what you see with chanterelles. So the longitudinal ridges cover the outer surface of the fruiting body. These are deeply forked. They are decurrent. They run the whole way down. They are close together, those ridges, and they are lilac or violet in color, and these produce yellowish brown spores. These fungi are mycorrhizal with spruce trees. They are found summer through fall, and they are preferential to deep, decaying mounds of forest duff, like decaying deciduous and pine litter, or I guess spruce litter. But you know what I mean, decaying needle duff. They are terrestrial, and they occur either singly or in scattered groups or in fairy rings. And that would be quite an attractive fairy ring for sure. They are also relatively uncommon. They are choice edibles, very good to eat. They go by the common name as well of violet chanterelles. Now it says high allergen potential. That should actually be high sensitivity potential. Some people can have a bad reaction to these. They are good for beginner mushroom pickers because you're not going to mistake this for anything toxic. But they do contain a tricarboxylic acid. Sorry, I'm just stuttering over that. And this causes gastrointestinal distress in some people, but not others. So some people will just have a toxic response to this that is relatively mild. Others will not. But I've included it in this section as a result of that. So the last group of mushrooms that we're going to look at are the Peziza Cups. These are very common in Saskatchewan. We have Peziza repanda on the left, which is by far the more common species, and then Peziza vesiculosa on the right. Telling a difference between the two is extremely difficult. You would probably need a microscope or an expert, and I am not an expert on Peziza cups. So for me, I generally just leave these alone, but we'll just go through it. The fruiting body is cup-shaped. They're tan to dark brown. They're up to about 5 inches across and up to 3 inches deep, usually a bit smaller. They're very cartilaginous in texture. And when you pick them, they become brittle very quickly and they'll just kind of break apart. And these do produce white spores. Here's a size reference for you. Very interesting how these spread their pores, right? Or their spores. They create this cup, and the cup fills with water during rainfall and spills over and carries those spores around. But every drop into the water that's built up in that cup will also knock spores loose. So they are saproroic with Peziza repanda, and they will grow on decaying hardwoods or on soil or on buried wood. And P. vesiculosa grows more on soil and manure. So this will be one of the few mushrooms that we actually look at here that actually grows on manure. These appear spring through fall, and they are solitary or scattered. Poor edibility. They don't taste like much. They are brittle. They are still commonly eaten in some places. I don't know why. They must be boiled for long periods of time, and you're talking about a brittle mushroom and that just breaks apart. So maybe that firms it up. I've never bothered. Toxicity is relatively mild if you don't boil them for long enough, and they cause gastrointestinal distress. So generally speaking, just leave these alone. If you want to try them out, go ahead. It's not going to kill you, that's for sure. But just know that you could have, the runs. I think the reason I'm even mentioning this is because I have included it as a lookalike for the wood ear, which is Auricularia americana, and those are found in the gelai fungi presentation. And as a result, with the wood ear, you can pretty much just straight eat them. If you were to just straight eat these, you would, have some stomach upset. So that's everything for this presentation. We will be looking at another presentation similar to this one that deals with more toxic species that are commonly eaten. And that will be the next one. So this is the Mushroom Wizard. Have yourself a great day. Thank you.